GBV has become a norm, which shouldn't be the case. I have been a victim, but today I choose to speak out for myself and for other women out there. Let us raise our voice against GBV, and we can fight it together.
Great. Hello, welcome back to another episode of Spilling Labrador Tea Under Cedar Trees with Kate and Mads.
Yes.
How's it going?
Yeah, it's going good. Welcome back. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday.
Happy Friday. And I don't know about you, but it's nice and warm over here.
No. Thank you. Thank you for letting me know that. We've gone back to rain, and
who knows?
It's now my computer saying sport headline, which is not the temperature.
But as far as I know,
it's 11 degrees.
So and raining today. So welcome to Victoria. Apologies.
All good.
But we get to something really cool today. We've just been pumping out special episodes like nobody's business. Yeah, we're not taking a break in the off season, and that is okay.
Yeah.
So we get to do something really exciting today. We get to have a crossover episode. I think it's our first ever crossover.
Mm-hmm.
And who we get to have it with?
We get to have it with our lovely friends at Raised Voices. Obviously, the Spilling Lab team just did an episode around gender-based violence in the last recording we did. And you know what? We get to continue on with this conversation, and we're having it with more friends. So I would love to pass it over if everyone on the other call would like to introduce themselves.
Hi, everyone. My name is Chana Kaunda, and I'm a board member of Nyakachuma Memorial Foundation, as well as an elder.
Hi. Good evening or morning on your end. My name is Florence Chuesha, and I'm one of the elders under the Nyakachuma Memorial Foundation. I'm excited to be here today.
Hello, good evening from my end. My name is Mary Esther Zulu, and I am a student, and as well as this part of the student steering committee right here at Nyakachuma Memorial Foundation.
Hi, good evening from our side. My name is Mukuni Kapapa, also a student and also part of the steering committee from Nyakachuma.
So awesome to have you all here and talk about something that's super important. And of course, to all of our listeners, if folks aren't in the place to listen to things about gender-based violence and sextortion, no problem. Feel free to come back to this episode when you're ready to have a good listen and learn some really fabulous things about what people are doing to take care of themselves and their communities.
Mm-hmm. We encourage you to seek the support that you need in the meantime, and hopefully we can be there to further your education on this topic at a later date.
Yeah. And for a little bit, Nyakachuma is based in Zambia, and so it's linked to our work at Videa, and they do really, really incredible things, and we're lucky to be in the conversation with them today and bringing together these concepts of gender-based violence. Just the last episode, we're talking about a northern context with Inuit and other Indigenous women, and now we get to talk about more of a global South perspective on GBV, which is something that's really cool, and maybe not a lot of folks are talking about.
Yeah, no, it's definitely a conversation that I think is going to be really beneficial and just really enlightening for a lot of folks to be able to broaden their understanding of how this impacts folks on a global scale.
Mm-hmm.
And with that, we could just get into some of the conversations that we're hoping to have.
Go for it, boss.
All right. So the first question that we're just opening up the floor to just chat about is what are some of the ways that you see gender-based violence or sextortion impacting mental health in your community?
Yeah, maybe to start with, especially in our communities, what we end up seeing with GBV and sextortion and how it's impacting communities is in view of, the moral fiber of families really gets disjointed and broken. And that's by virtue of the emotive status of the person that is actually going through that. I mean, it's already humanely degrading to go through GBV, and GBV, whether physically, emotionally, physiologically. And of course, in our communities, we know very well, living in this part of the world, it's not just about nuclear family. You have various, dependents. It's a huge clan around you that ends up being affected, whether it's small children, parents, grandparents, cousins. So it has a multiplier effect, when it comes to, impacting a person. And, even just from a point of view in terms of individually, you can never be the same because something has actually been taken away from you that ideally was not the case from the start, So I mean that's my take, basic take in terms of what's happening around us. Yeah.
Perhaps just to extend that, and really, when we're talking about communities and GBVs, extortion and mental health, I think that at least for the case of Zambia, you are also grappling with the fact that this is a silent, violation of a person's dignity and security, and so it also kind of like trickles down that mental health is not a very comfortable topic in our communities. So the person has to first of all deal with the fact that GBV and sextortion are not easily discussed subjects, and so there's some silence around that. But also, when people talk about mental health, at least for a very long time, it's kind of like related to, institutions where people are hospitalized and are treated. And I think because of that, it's only in the recent past I'd like to believe that communities, our young people, perhaps are becoming more aware that it is not just confined to somebody, having mental issues or having to be taken to a mental hospital for treatment. For the most part, people deny. They don't want to talk about the fact that they do have, mental issues that need to be discussed. So I think that what then happens is that you have a situation where people who are victims or survivors have nowhere, to seek help, and also understanding that mental health is very key when you're dealing with, survivors of GBV and sextortion. It's very, very key because like Chana has said, the very acts really impact on the mental health of someone. So I think that we are in better days. I think that in terms of a wider understanding of it, but I think we still need much more, because communities are not as responsive, communities are not as trauma sensitive, with victims of sextortion and GBV.
Yeah. And maybe, sorry, just to add to what Florence has stated, I think from a cultural point of view, when it comes to mental health, it's seen as stigma. We've known it in this country as mental health is related to a mental disorder and not necessarily in terms of distress and how you're coping with an issue. So for time immemorial, culturally, anyone who seemed to be different was almost ostracized. I think it's only nowadays, in view of course, technology, education, and access to education, more and more people are getting to understand that mental health is not about having a disorder or being institutionalized. It's caused by some distress that has happened or trauma in one's life, which can be anything, including GBV and sextortion, that takes you down that path.
Okay, so to begin with, I would like to just acknowledge the fact that we are in the mental health month and the theme is community. So when you're bringing it home in terms of community, I'm experiencing is a situation concerning GBV and how the victim is responding to it. So here's the scenario. There's this lady from my community. She was recently battered by the husband, and you could see how the children are also they don't have a word for it, but they are experiencing it mentally. And then when you try to have some sort of a conversation with that person, they're trying to also cover up for the perpetrator. Like, this is the father of my kids, and where can I take my kids? How then am I going to also explain if at all my kids demand of it's a behavioral demand when it comes to battering, because mostly she's been battered and she's been confined into a place where she has no option but to abide to whatever the environment has. So I'm thinking the way gender-based violence in this case, it's really impacting this particular aspect in community. People do not know how best to respond or to bottle up such emotions. They only pretend to heal, but when there's actually more that they can do with everything that is going on around them. So it's such a huge impact both on the person and on the children, which are the dependents. Yeah. I think that's what I think GBV is impacting the community.
And there's also, I'm sure, that mother, there's loss of confidence. As it was, I mean, from being battered for a long time, you lose yourself as a person, as a human being.
Yes, because it's clear.
And hence now she's probably falling into the perpetrator's way of doing things, and it almost becomes a norm.
And also, it's also attached to the cultural aspect where if I do this, how will people see me? If I do this, how is the society or the community going to view me? What is it that the community is going to say? So in the end, she's bringing nothing to the table. And that's her staying power in that toxic environment, because she thinks if I reported this issue, then definitely my entire clan, which are her children, will definitely be affected by the entire thing, which is GBV.
Okay. So also just to add to what most of them have actually been saying, I feel when it comes to the community itself, it gets to a point where you get to realize that in our country, we don't really have the Ubuntu spirit, which means a we feeling for everyone. So I feel like even when you're talking about things like gender-based violence, extortion, or any forms of violence, people don't want to come forth to come and speak about it because they feel like it is not the place for them to actually even give that type of support. I'll give a scenario where some students went viral on social media because she exposed her body. She actually sent a video to her boyfriend, and I don't know what went wrong. The videos actually went on Facebook. And because of that, instead of the community coming together to find solutions on how to help her, we were the first ones to throw the stone at her. Blaming her, saying, in the first place, why would you send this to her? Judging her, saying, you're too young, why would you be in a relationship with this person? And and all those things. People always started making comments with the same video saying, that's your father's house. How can you do this in your father's house? Like, you don't have proper confidence. Like, why would you sew your body out like that? So I feel when it comes to mental health also, this is one of the reasons to why people don't want to even open up and share some certain things, because even before they share the view, it's already self-blame for them, because it's like we already know what the community or society will tell us. Before they even intervene or ask us what happened, we already know the blame will be on us, the victim itself. So I feel the community hasn't really contributed much to support in terms of mental health. And also the example she just gave of where a woman was just bitten by her husband, that also causes for something called generational, like a generational curse in terms of like the mental health issue. Because when you look at the children growing up, seeing all those factors, for them it's going to be something normal. And then also they will not be able to also stand up for the next person also. So meaning we're causing a disease that's going to be the same circle over and over again. And I also feel when it comes to mental health in the community, most victims don't want to open up about certain things because they already know that even before they share their story, the victim herself or himself is the blame itself. They don't care about the person that shared that video or the people who are commenting about that video. So I think there's that. And also there's that thing of shame, as she mentioned, because you don't want to share it because you got that shame. And also guilt, because if I was the one in that position, why would I go to Esther and say, Esther, a video of me has just leaked on social media? The guilt already eats me up. So, because just her facial expression maybe, or I'll already judge on how she's going to react. So if the guilt inside will actually even kill me. And this is what leads to more suicidal situations here in the community, because people already judge themselves based on what others are yet to see. I think that would be my contribution when it comes to that.
And also to just add on what Mukuni is from saying, the trauma doesn't just affect the victims, but also the people around, even just within the vicinity. You can tell so people are crushed, but they don't know where to go, or sometimes they don't have the zeal or morale to just report these issues, or maybe, just have clear conversations or transparent conversations with the person that is affected. You can see to say the entire vicinity where this person is, people are crushed. They fear to say, if we get into this issue, maybe we might also be involved in other ways. Maybe we might also be victims to perhaps a man or the woman who is the perpetrator.
And then Madam Cheka also mentioned something in the beginning, saying that it also just makes the humiliation that it comes with, it creates you as a human being. So I also just feel like it also just makes that victim powerless. Like you don't have control over your own life anymore, because it's like it's evolved within people. So people will keep on saying things about you and judging you based on what they have seen. So I think that's where the problem is also. And this is what makes most people who are victims of sextortion and GBV silence, because they already know what's going to happen.
Absolutely. And like all these points are incredibly important. And like it's interesting to me because like these are also issues we face within our own communities, like within the communities in which I come from, the communities in which Madeline comes from, the normalization of gender-based violence, and also the shame with gender-based violence, even though like your neighbor has also experienced it. So like why are we shaming and othering other survivors even though we are a survivor ourselves, I think is so interesting. And to like this intergenerational effects of GBV and how it is a learned behavior, and like a learned way of being that it doesn't have to be anymore.
Yeah, no, that was the whole time you guys were talking, I was like, ah, yes, intergenerational effects is always something that like it's something we're aware of, but then not seeing how much it really permeates our communities. And the fact that something can happen in one family, but it has a ripple effect across all of the families in our communities. Because usually people do see similarities, because it is something that tends to be, though it's can sometimes be very much in the open, what's happening quietly in the background as well. Like it's happening to a lot of folks. And it's just something that because of the shame, people are afraid to share, or they only share with certain groups. But like, especially amongst women, we know that like sharing is what keeps us safe, but also we might not feel safe enough to stand up and take action against those that are perpetrating GBV. And so our daughters will see that like we're accepting it and that we're acting like it's normal, that it's something that we just kind of have to, bear with and push forward and just be strong. Um, but that's just like, that's a cycle that we really need to work on breaking. And I think having conversations like this is like a really huge step to breaking those cycles and like bringing it to light and making it something that's not shameful to talk about and something that we're advocating to end and something we're trying to change. So it's just really, really important. And thank you all for sharing that.
Yeah, and I
Member introduce herself.
Yeah.
She's
My name is Vanessa Chidufia. Coming from a theater club called Chigwilizano, which means unity. Our main focus as a theater club is GBV, marginalized women, and young girls as well.
That's awesome. Nice to meet you. I'm Kate, and that's Madeline. And we're happy to have you in the conversation. And I think that like it's very important as us as women and folks talkingly about GBV also allows the space for men to start openly talking about it too. And public shaming in a way that is helpful of like we don't it's not healthy to hit women. We don't have to hurt our loved ones for a sense of control or from a place of insecurity, and that's we can work on having like healthier relationships, because I do think it's really important for men identifying folks to also have these really open conversations and to heal too, because it's about intergenerational healing as much as anything, and especially too with like mental health in the way of like it doesn't need like the stigma around is really really intense also here as well. And it's interesting to me because it's kind of like, well, of course you'll have mental health challenges if you experience high rates of violence, and that also deserves to be healed, because it's also just not like a physical thing that happens to you. It's an emotional thing that happens to you, and it's a mental thing that happens to you, and also it's a spiritual thing that happens to you as well. Like part of your spirit gets damaged when you're no longer in healthy relationships, I feel, at least. And so like the next question is, why is it so important to talk about mental health when we're talking about GBV? And also like how can we better support our families in our communities in navigating these challenges? That's such a big question.
Well, GBV and sextortion do not just leave physical scars, they rest on the mind. GBV and sextortion, they love to rest on a person's mental faculties, because when you are being tormented, when you are being sextorted, controlled, when you are being prey of the manipulator, it becomes so easy for you to fidget, to have anxious thoughts, and to even develop suicidal thoughts. So it is very key to have these conversations interlinked, because they go hand in hand, and they normally go interchangeably because GBV and sextortion, GBV, if it's physical, then definitely somebody will just have it in their mind to say, I'll be beaten and it will end. But it's leaving a lasting effect on who they are becoming, such that you find that people are becoming suicidal. A critical scenario I can share is what I saw recently on Instagram. There was this young boy. He was going through his feed, and then a message popped up. That was a scammer. The scammer started developing conversations with that person, not until they got them to sharing their nudity. So afterwards, what happened was their nudity was exposed and the boy committed suicide. So it was slowly but surely devouring their mind. So GBV, mental health, these are issues that need to be talked about, because they really damage the mind.
For one, I would say the reason why we should talk about mental health when it comes to GBV and sextortion is because mental health is the hygiene of somebody. If your mind is not stable, your mind is not okay, it affects your productivity. And when you're not productive, it also affects the economy of the country. So it's just not an individual who gets affected. It's the community, it's the family, it's the world around you. So it's very important that we talk about mental health concerning GBV and sextortion. When it comes to mental health, if somebody is affected, believe you me, there's nothing that you can tell the person that is going to help them to be productive. There is nothing that you can tell them that can change how they think. So the reason why I said mental health is like your hygiene. When the mind is dirty, you become contaminated. This is where the suicide thoughts come in. This is where depression comes in. So it's very important that we talk about mental health because it's the hygiene of a person, and that is what makes you you. Without that, it means you have lost sanity and you have lost who you are.
Perhaps in agreeing with my two colleagues, mental health is actually I think the most key element in addressing dealing with mental health, in addressing GBV and sextortion. So I think that when you begin to deal with issues of mental health, you begin to assist the survivor. You are helping the survivor deal with not just the visible wounds, which is, the beatings or the assault, but when you talk about mental health, because it's inherent in me and it speaks to my dignity, like I said, it means you're also dealing with the invisible wounds. So I think that then, if for instance you look at the issue of getting justice, if somebody is not assisted, the survivor is not assisted with also, being in the proper frame of mind, or helping them with their mental status, you sometimes find that cases, the person may not get justice when it comes to GBV and sextortion, because you will find, for instance, a police who may not be trauma sensitive in terms of them trying to get this information. So if you're not in the right frame of mind, your statement is not one that can stand up in court. You talk about healing as well. How does somebody heal from not just outside and within? It's because you're talking about issues of mental health. It's not specific to the survivor, then as a community, so that this person begins to heal post getting the justice, post the healing physically, but I think internally, so that they can then contribute, like my colleague has indicated. They can reach their potential. And I think lastly, perhaps just to say that if in most cases, and mental health included, the one way of breaking this cycle is having the conversation. So you get communities to participate more on issues of what is going on. You get the survivors' experiences validated, because now people are talking about, what has happened. People are supporting the survivor. You also then perhaps finally get a situation where communities, because I think you spoke about it when you talked about it just doesn't affect the victim, it also affects the children, for instance. So I think that when you're having these conversations, when you remove the stigma of GBV and sextortion, then I think the whole community begins to heal. And I think that once, ensuring that the mental aspect of the survivor and the whole community is dealt with, you really, really need to break the silence, if you like, and begin to discuss the issue.
Yeah, and maybe just to pick up from where Florence has left it in terms of healing, and not to really belabor the point, but table talks like this are very important. Any healing process begins with talking about an issue, because once it's harbored, it just degenerates into all these mental health issues. because now you become a broken person individually, emotionally, mentally. And of course, as other colleagues have stated, you're never in the right frame of mind to do anything. And of course, I think, to add on to this, when you do go through certain traumas or certain exposures in life, as they say, you enculturate into a certain situation where it almost starts becoming normal, but it is not normal. Actually, it's an abnormal situation to be in. But because you're so closed in and you're going through it over and over again, it starts looking like, no, this is the way it should be. And the perpetrator is actually doing me a favor to do this to me all the time. So already, in effect, that's breaking you down from a mental point of view. And of course, the multiply effect to that, or unfortunately the implication is, one can end up getting broken down to the point of going into depression and unfortunately dying. And we don't want to see that. So I think it goes back to the point of, it's important, I think, to talk about these issues. I know it's very difficult. Individuals will keep things to themselves until maybe it's at a point of it's broken point kind of situation. Even if you have a very close friend, especially in this part of the world, you want to keep things to yourself because you're worried, how am I going to be looked upon at, perceptions and so on. And because we're such a community that is about perception, what you're doing, where you are, status, and things like that. So yeah, that's my take.
I think for me, I'll say mental health, we treat it like a cancer. If at all you know someone who's got cancer or like how the cancer disease works, that's just mental health. Because when you look at it, it's the main contributing factor of mental health. The first one actually is even denied, because most people who are going through mental health issues, the first thing that even takes them to the next level is denial, because they don't want to accept that there's something wrong with me and I need help. So when they have that first step, it now causes things like depression, anxiety, guilt, self-blame. And as they've all put it, when someone has got cancer, it doesn't just affect that person and the organs that they have. It also affects the people that are around them, who are also looking at how the person is responding to treatment. So I'll take mental health as a cancer in the community, because even in the family level, like the example that Mary Esther gave in the beginning of a mother who was bitten by the husband, that cancer is going to spread from the wife herself to her children, from her children to her children's children, and just like that. So it's going to be something inherent where no one can actually talk about it because it's within them. So the moment we get to actually make people understand that this thing is not normal and they have to seek help will be the first step. The denial part, I think with every person that has gone through mental health or depression or anxiety, the first thing that they go through is denial. Not accepting that I'm in this situation and I need help is the first thing, and that's what kills them. And so I feel, for me, when it comes to family members and like community at large, I feel having safe spaces within the community that's guided by someone who's actually trained, like a trained maybe psychosocial counselor that can actually even be there in the safe spaces to actually highlight certain things and talk about them. Advocacy and awareness. I still feel we still have a lot of work to do, because not everyone knows what mental health is. As Madam Florence put it in the beginning, for us in our culture, when someone is going through mental health issues, it's more like you are not normal. Like they'll just take you like, this person is not normal, or it's maybe caused by witchcraft or sub-traditional type of aspects. That's what we call mental health here. So I feel the moment we start spreading awareness and advocacy about mental health and how mental health looks like, I feel that's going to help the community actually understand these certain things. And also, I also feel like we need more capacity building in the communities, because I feel like most community members don't really have anything to do. So it's like, in case someone has something to do, I'll give a practical example. In most communities here, if someone has been, let's say, they've caught someone who's maybe a prostitute or whatnot, instead of people running towards to see what the situation is about and controlling the situation, we'll be the first ones running with our phones in our hands, trying to record and trying to believe that, oh, we really caught a prostitute, instead of actually thinking of what to do, how did this come about. So I feel like we have such work to do in the communities by also building capacity and make people have things to do, so that they don't really have a focus or a drive on concentrating on one particular thing. I think that would be my contribution when it comes to that.
No, those are all really great points. And I think, yeah, it circles back to kind of when you're all talking, I was like, oh, this just reminds me of like how in Indigenous communities, we're all like going back to doing this thing referred to as circle justice as being a way to navigate bringing communities together to talk about issues. So, for example, if someone, has sexually assaulted or physically assaulted another individual, of bringing like not just those two together to talk it out and share how they felt and like how this has impacted their lives, both the person who perpetrated it and the victim, but also like members of their family, other community members that like maybe witnessed it or were a part of like being a part of the debrief of what had happened. Everyone coming together and sharing how this one instance had an impact on everybody and getting to like all share thoughts and feelings. And just that act, obviously there's more steps to it, but just that act of everyone sharing that impact, it does broaden the view and shows how this isn't just like a one-on-one situation, like you were all stating, like if a husband is, abusing his wife and they have children, the children will see that and be impacted by it. So just that thought of everyone who is involved in witnessing or are affected by it gets to communicate how that's impacted them and seeing the widespread of it and identifying that, okay, now we need to come together and try to heal as a group collectively, because this isn't just something that impacted one individual, it impacted also the person that perpetrated this, like the situation, and everyone surrounding it. And that just being like one step and one way of navigating that and understanding that like obviously this might not work for everyone. And just being open to like having more holistic approaches to navigating injustices as a whole, but also like gender-based violence, of being that part of being like it doesn't just affect you physically, it also affects you mentally, it affects your spirit. And so obviously you need to approach this from more than one level of being like, well, we can't just go to the courts, because especially for women, more often than not, there is not a lot of justice, or it's very minute. Like most, especially here in Canada, like rape situations, sometimes folks are only in, if they do get any sentencing, it's usually a couple months. And you got to think about it, him only being in, or that individual being incarcerated for a couple months versus like the individual who was impacted having to live with that for their entire lives. It's just like, where's the sense of justice in that? So looking at it as like a much bigger scale of being like, okay, we have to do a lot more than just trying to use, the legal system, unfortunately. Was kind of how it was feeling during the conversation.
I agree too. And like, I have so many thoughts and opinions on the justice system. Even as
A baby lawyer.
like studying law, like I got I got beef. And that's okay. Because I don't believe the system is a system of care completely. And I do think folks should, there's repercussions and consequences for actions, for harm, for committing harms. And I truly believe in this like really interesting concept that like survivors having a say in what those consequences are. And what they can look like, rather than just like it being taken out of their hands and into a system that they have no control over completely, or respect and dignity. And I was really like enjoying what Florence was saying, like the dignity piece of when you're a survivor of gender-based violence, and like the need to build up your mind in a healthy way, and the way that if we build up our young ones in a healthy way, and with proper mental health support, the less likelihood of perfect, no problem, the less likelihood, or like a reduced rate of gender-based violence, because people will have boundaries, right, and know what's healthy and what isn't healthy for them.
She's just getting her internet reinstalled. So just talking to a random man off screen. But yeah, no, like this is all conversations that like this isn't new information for a lot of us. Like this is all stuff that we've like known for years and like have had quiet conversations about, but this is you all have such powerful voices in bringing this out into the open more and having more open discussions about it. So I just want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart for sharing and taking up the space for people who are impacted by this. I open it up for any other thoughts from your end.
In defense of the law. And speaking of your lawyer, I think that the role of the courts in sending a message is very important. And I understand, and I think that's why when we speak about any injustice or any like GBV and sextortion, if you like to be specific, we recognize that it's you can't, it's multi-pronged in terms of interventions. So you will have interventions at different levels. And I think that the justice system is part of those interventions. And when it works, I think that it sends, first of all, a very strong message in society. But you will find that sometimes that is when the victim begins to heal. Once there is a justice process that results in an effective remedy. You did speak to a few months in your case. Our laws are very stiff. So when it comes to issues of rape, defilement, it's 15 years. And it's a minimum.
Wow.
So yes, it's 15 minimum. I remember going to one of the correctional centers, and there was this man. He must have been in his 60s. And when he saw us in my other life, he wept. And he says, "What can you do for me?" And we're like, "Okay, so you're in here for what?" He says, "Indecent acts." And he says, in the local language, it even has more impact, Nagula tabe ziba. But what that in interpreting that, he says, "All I did was touch her breast." And because the law says when you're speaking about indecent offenses, when you're speaking about defilement, when you're speaking about rape, the minimum sentence is 15 years. So you can imagine the message that was sent in that community that touching her breast is that's a defilement on a violation of her person and her autonomy. And the courts, then sentence you to 15 years. So I think, yes, I think that as in your case, perhaps in our situation, it may even be worse. But I think that initiatives such as the One Stop Center that I hope will extend or expand to other provinces with enough sensitization, then the community knows that you don't have to go to different institutions. You will go to a one-stop center. The first institution is one that receives you, which is some kind of kit or clinic in that center to make sure you gather the evidence. The next one is the counseling. The next one is what support is coming. The next one is taking the matter to court. So I think when the interventions are one that encompass the different facets, then I think you have a higher chance of getting a remedy that is through the justice system. Yeah, so I think, yes, it may have its problems, but when it works, I think that it sends a very strong message. And also, I think for the victim, you begin to, that healing for some then begins to take place. And I think even the community, the families, it extends that this person that, made this violation. I'll give an example. A few years back, I was listening to the radio on International Women's Day. And a man called in. And he says, why are you just talking about GBV in relation to women? My wife beats me. And when I went to the police and I reported the fact that my wife, was beat me up, the police started to laugh. And they said, what kind of a man are you that your woman can beat you? What more when the thieves come in? So he says, because of the way they treated his matter, and I think the police is your first contact in the justice system, when you want a remedy. He says, so the interviewer or the person hosting the show says, so what did you do? He says, I went back home and I have now learned, to not do what triggers her. Can you imagine in what state he's in? The fear, what am I doing right? He says, every day I learn that, if I do this, she's going to beat me up. So I must remember that this is not an action I must do. And I can just imagine, at the time, perhaps I wasn't in a position to assist in any way. But that story on radio has stuck with me, in terms of just how when the system fails you, the community is not talking about it, what that does to a person and so forth and so. So yeah, I just wanted to defend just that and thank you.
But also, when we talk about the justice system, I want us to have almost more like directing, because I'm now seeing it for us youths, and I would say for us who are in university, with the Cybersecurity Act that has just come to place in Zambia. We are taking it for granted. I'll use an example of where our most teenagers these days now, because of the Cybersecurity Act that has come, I can post anything on social media. And those that will comment, anything that's going to comment towards like maybe negativity or bring me down, what I can easily report those ones and the law will follow them. So because I have seen there's a trend that's happening now on Facebook where ladies and women are now posting almost half naked pictures, videos of themselves dancing and doing all sorts of things just to get a public's reaction. And if at all one happens to react and is maybe, let me say, is a big person, I can simply turn the tables around and put that person into problems. So I want us to, because we are talking about things of GBV, harassment, sextortion, and the likes. So in few years from now, how are we seeing this type of act? Is it going to be helpful to? It is helpful, but is it going to be helpful in the right ways, or it's just there to hush us down and make us know what to do and what not to do with our phones?
I think I don't know. I don't know if I can respond to that. But I was recently attending an interview at the Zambia National Broadcast. I don't know. Yeah. So we had one of the people that was explaining and breaking down the cyber law. And some of the things he said is, it is not here to silence anyone. And it is not here to tell you what and what not to post. It is here to protect the community. So the why laws are put in place, it's to protect the citizens. So imagine you post something every day and you're being harassed. Imagine we're having a conversation here and I'm recording you and I use it against you. So initially this law has come here to protect the people. That, of course, people think it is here to silence you, or I'm not allowed to talk about politics, or I can post whatever that I want. If you post anything that affects the well-being of the citizens, then you can be arrested. So it is just here to ensure sanity on the cyberspace, because where we are heading, the world is going digital. Yes. So imagine if we're digital and there's nothing to protect us. It's going to be chaos. There's going to be crime. So the law is just here to make sure to say there's sanity on the cyberspace.
But to speak in agreement with her, yes, the law has provisions, the cyber laws has provisions, obviously, that speak to what you're saying. But there's a flip side. There's a flip side. And I think that the flip side is that the offenses are so obscure. You don't even know. They have made sure it's shrouded in interpretation by law enforcement. So maybe to digress a bit, I know that just this week that has ended, somebody made a posting that just said, Ushechunsu, will he win? Yes. Okay, will he win in 2016? Chunsu just means a lot of hair because an accent has an afro.
Yeah.
And this person just made a posting and said, hey, will the afro win? He was arrested. Now tell me, and he's been arrested under the cyber. What did he do wrong? Aside, you see, it doesn't support expression, freedom of expression. So what in that case, the cyber law, what did he do wrong? And you see, so it is curtailing people's ability to discuss, express, and you see, you may think that it's on the bigger scale of your freedom of expression and whatever, but it will trickle down. Somebody will make a statement that's speaking to mental health. The way they will state it, it has no, the net has been cast too wide. Okay? It's what the police believe you have said that is wrong. And because the definitions of these offenses is so wide and obscure, they will arrest you for anything. So I can imagine that if somebody goes into a community, perhaps as young people, you're advocating, and for some reason, maybe your language, maybe your approach is not one that my age likes, and I go to the police, what stops them making that arrest? So I think that, like all laws, perhaps we acknowledge it has some very good provisions, but unfortunately, the evil side of it is extreme. And I think about my 27-year-old, and I'm telling her, because to also discuss is part of mental health. It's mental health.
Yeah.
Especially the fact that all our young ones now scared. What's going to have an impact on the mental health of
You mean just find what I chose to say when say
this law needs to go back. It needs to happen, and its politicians are really pushing that it's a fantastic law. But I think it goes into every fiber of our lives in terms of what we say and what we speak about. So yeah,
and maybe just to supplement, I think in terms of what Florence has stated, I mean, definitely, I think the provisions become subjective in terms of interpretation.
yes.
So when you're charging a citizen, it all depends on how you have interpreted the situation.
And as human beings, we're not the same.
Yeah.
Right? So what I may hear from you and my understanding will be very different what Esther picks. So in that sense, I really do agree with Florence. I think we just, it needs to be relooked at in its entirety, because also we've got our young people now who say things on the fly.
Yeah.
And you're not thinking about what you're saying or what it means.
Yeah.
But someone who grew up in a different generation reads it in a very different way. In our culture, they say at Amapinda. So now you have to start interpreting a parable.
What I mean.
This is what I meant. You see, but for younger people, it's not like that. What you see is what you say.
Yeah.
And other person will say, no, you've insulted. Yes. But me, to you, it's not.
That's not what I mean.
When a law becomes subjective, then I think we have a bad law.
Because the reason why I ask this question is because I have noticed a trend. Most young people want to speak about things that are going through them. I'll use an example. I have a friend who likes to post things on TikTok, and she'll make a live crying on TikTok. But then me who knows that her crying on TikTok isn't helping her, but it's actually it's more like it's just creating more and more problems for her. The moment I feel like I want to reach out to her, maybe in the comment sections, and because I'm reading the comments, and I feel like immediately I just type something, it will turn tables and it will be me. Like, why would you just say this? And because nowadays also, most people who are going through depression do the most weird things on social media. They'll post a photo of themselves, maybe butt naked, and say something. And because they don't know how to express themselves, they'll just use that form of how to get to the public. And most people now will just start commenting things and saying things. And sooner or later, you just hear the person has killed themselves or something. This is why I brought it to the table, because when we're talking about mental health and the advocacy aspect and also the awareness, usually for us in Zambia, and I think that now it's worldwide, so our phones are the most powerful tool. And if at all you want to reach out to the mass, you use your phone. So with this law now, it's like it's controversial to also us doing our work in terms of advocacy and awareness. That's why I had really after that.
And also, I think it's now building a growing tendency of people to live in fear. Because imagine you are in the middle of a conversation and you get a wake up call to say, wait, our pause or text being recorded. Are we going to be jailed the next day?
Yes, that also.
People are now living in fear, like they cannot fully express who they really are in texting and just in phone calls, because we are a generation and we are in an era that demands voices. So if we are being shut down or in fear, because if I do this, the next morning they'll visit my door, they'll be banging on my door saying, why do you do this? I have to yes, and you're just moving, trying to provide clarity on anything that you are saying. I think it has to be revisited.
And what that does when you're putting a lid on everything you're shipping is, of course, it has an impact on your mental
health.
Yeah. You're putting emotions, everything. You're not able to talk about things openly.
And we're just from saying the first step is actually
Conversation, and now we are not talking. So it's like a pot of beans.
well, where did the relationship went back to start?
Yeah.
Literally.
Yes.
Yeah. Anyway, again, going back to the same GBV that and sextortion that we're talking about, we also need to understand to say people don't understand. Some people do not understand to say GBV is not a family issue. It's actually a crime. So we need more advocacy and tell these people to say you don't need to talk this amongst your family members. You need the law enforcement to know what is going on and how they can help you, how they can come in and know those kind of stuff. And being a victim of sextortion as well, the victims need to understand to say also producing this material is also a crime. They should understand to say you don't need to produce anything. If anything, we need to tell them directly to say, if your boyfriend or your man wants to see whatever he wants to see, why don't you just meet up with him and like sending them via social media or whatever platform that you're using? Because once you produce, it's a crime, and once you produce, it is bound to circulate. So we need to do more advocacy on these issues.
Yes. That was incredible. Flores, you should just come be my law prof. Come be my law professor. Fair enough.
Maybe just one other aspect. I know on the GBV side of things, we're always thinking about the physical aspect, but there's also the emotional bit, being sexually seduced verbally.
Yeah.
Is GBV.
Yeah.
You can have a colleague at work who's male, and each time he sees you, oh, you know what, with that type of body, it would be nice if you wore this kind of outfit. That in itself is a problem. And it can build up from being that kind of verbal into actual physical. And I think we need to be alive to that.
Yeah.
And that's also quite rampant.
Yeah.
By some of these advances that are made in that way. And they build up into other things.
Even this cousin thing.
Yeah. Yes. Have been like that.
So there's some cultural terminologies, building styles. Yeah, like yeah, you cover with your rent. The real is your after the variation. You keep them. So yeah,
And also body shaming, just like you mentioned. For me, it's been my skin tone. Eric, thank you so much. Every time when I visit or when we visit my family, like the extended family in one place, they always ask, up to law, you've never bleached your skin. So, and I remember when I was a little bit younger, I used to bottle emotions up, like, why am I different? Should I do this? Why am I always the first person that they will notice? Am I really ugly? Is this really bad? So it also created that emotional distress within me, because I nearly changed myself because to satisfy the other party. So I think body shaming is also one of those things that contributes to GBV.
Yeah. And also, since we have our orderly here, the rush on us trying to get married, I don't know where it comes from. Yes. Right.
Time in the age where you're, okay, by this time you're supposed to be married. What are you still doing in your father's house? Man, it's
And I feel because of such pressures for teenagers, or for us young adults, is what has led to a lot of things like sextortion, and also gender-based violence, because we want to please what our mothers are telling us. I'll give a practical example. I have a friend who every single time we go functions, the man is always asking, your friends are having kitchen parties and weddings. When are we going to ever receive one? So you find there's always that thing of trying to hook her up with someone else. And because of that, you don't know the type of person that she's meeting. So you find that when they meet, and no, I like your body. And I feel gents now know how to use their phones. You find the phone has been placed somewhere. You think the phone is charging, not knowing recording, entire session, the talk, the act, everything. And now after doing that, they start sending it to you, saying, but you don't watch it. Yeah, they start using it against you. So I feel also the cultural term of our mothers telling us, saying, when are you getting married? Your biological clock is ticking, has also contributed massively to gender-based violence and sextortion itself. And also, when we also look at the economy itself, I feel the most thing for us, I think I'll speak mostly on our generation. I think the thing that has mostly contributed to sextortion on our end is lack of contentment, one. And two, because we want to be people that we're not proud of the people who we are, so we want to try to explore. So when it comes to contentment, especially in in secondary schools, university life, and also just society, we want to have what the next person is having. There's a term that they use here in Zambia called selling, which means that you go on the internet, like when they say you're selling, it's more like you're sharing your body parts to certain people. There's a group of Lebanese men I feel that are like in the country right now, and that's like a target market for us. So when we want something, you just send either a photo of your breast and they'll give you money. You send this, and they're targeting university students because they know the lives that our university students want to have is beyond what our parents can provide. So I feel because of lack of contentment and that type of peer pressure from our friends has what has led to most sextortion issues and gender-based violence. And also I have a colleague of mine who is in a very good abusive relationship. I'll call it good because every single time you want to bring it up, she actually told us off by saying, if you report this man to the police stations, will you marry me or will you be my next boyfriend? So I feel even if you want to report this situation to like the police or it's you to fall back on me, saying, why did you go and report on you're not the victim. The victim is protected. So I feel like such issues for us is what we're still trying to deal with. And I feel it really needs like some sort of agency. And I think as females, we are blind. I don't know what love has done to us. I don't know what type of I don't know what love has done to us. We are blind. So when a man says, I love you, and I'm beating you because I love you, as long as the love is there, it is love. So I don't know what work has to be done to more like open our brains and our minds to actually see that this is good and this is bad.
Yeah, and also like speaking to the point of the way that the world is also women are usually the first ones to feel, economic impacts, climate change. Like we're the ones to be the first group of individuals that are victims of that, and usually that ends up being through gender-based violence. Because obviously if men or other individuals are feeling pressure from the changes or the complexities of the world, they kind of take it out on whoever's nearby, and women are seen as weaker, and so we end up usually being at the brunt of that. And also the idea that since civilization, essentially, like sex work has been something that women have participated in, and it is something that makes us vulnerable, and is another link in another way that sextortion is prevalent and is ongoing. And I know, like, especially within North American society, trying to normalize that in a way that it can be like having policies in place to make it safer, and so that women have, and those who are in that field have more autonomy and say and safety in that. Because as of right now, obviously it's more discreet in the sense of like you said, you find out that there's these group of men that are in community that that, like, if you're, low on funds and you're wanting just to be able to, feed your family, you're like, I can just send a quick pic and I'll get the money that I need for the time being, but it's putting you at risk as well. That's just something that, like, I was like, oh my God, yes. That's definitely a conversation that, like, Kate and I have had and also had with other folks of how much everything is interconnected and linked, and, like, you just see that, like, it's just embedded in most things that we're exposed to.
Absolutely. And it just, like, really blows my mind, really, at the end of the day, of, like, how, again, going back to the piece of, like, there's so many folks who are survivors and victims of gender-based violence and sextortion, and we're a bunch of folks that will shame and blame people for being survivors and victims of gender-based violence. And so, like, having to remove this, like, stigma because it's such a lived experience and reality for so many people that we love, really, at the end of the day, um, is fascinating to me. And, like, I love economic things. I don't know why. They just fascinate me. Um, and so, like, this piece around, you know, providing a safe livelihood for people who engage in sex work, I think is really important. And two, of, like, within the Canadian context, it's not illegal to sell sexual activity and services. However, it is illegal to purchase them. And so, like, we're still making it a way for potential dangers for folks who engage, and trying to say we're trying to protect the people who sell their services, but I don't think we've quite got it yet. I have hope that one day we will. And this has just been such, like, a fruitful and fabulous conversation I've really enjoyed having.